The first thing that we'll do is figure out how we get the form data out of the form. We need to go back to our form and change one small thing, which is on the input, we need to give the input a name. And the name that we give the input here will be the key that we look it up by inside of the route. And I think a good name would just be name, but I do think that's a little confusing. So let's just do new friend. So the value of this, in this case, Bob, will be sent in the body of the request. And inside the body of the request, there will be a single property named new friend, and it will be equal to Bob. To make this a little easier to see, let's go to the app.js into the post route for add friend, and let's console.log request.body. And request.body is an object that will contain all of the data from the request body. And remember, when we have a form that's making a post request, all of the form data is put in the request body, and then it gets to our Express app, and we want to pull it out of the request body. So if I print the request body, we should see that new friend is equal to Bob. However, that's not going to work because we're missing one small piece, and I'll show you that it doesn't work first. So let's add in Billy. I made a new friend. We get you have reached the post route, and we get a console.log here. Request.body is undefined. And that's because Express out of the box doesn't actually create the request.body for us. We need to explicitly tell it to take the request body and turn it into a JavaScript object for us to use called request.body. So to do that, we actually need to install a package called body parser. So npm install body-parser --save. And body parser has kind of gone in and out of Express, where at one point it was bundled with Express. You didn't have to install it separately. Now you do. It is something that we'll use in every app pretty much. Anytime we have a form that a user enters data into that we want to extract the data from on the server side, we need to use body parser. Okay, so it's not enough just to install it. We then need to require it here. So we'll just do body parser equals require body-parser. And then the next thing we need to do is tell Express to use body parser. So that looks like this. We need to do app.use body parser, which is the variable that we just created by importing the body parser package. And then we need to do .url encoded. And then inside of here, we're going to write extended is true. And I don't want to bog this video down by going into too much detail about what this is. If you do have questions, you can go to the body parser docs and read about what URL encoded does and what extended true does. It's one of those lines that we'll see all the time, and honestly, you'll just copy and paste most of the time. So now that we have that set up, if we restart the server now, without changing our code, we have app.post add friend, and we're console.logging request.body. Now if we refresh, let's go back to the form /friends and add in a friend named Linda. I made a new friend, and we look in the console, we see request.body is now an object, and that's coming from body parser. So body parser took the request body and parsed it into a JavaScript object, which has new friend is equal to Linda. So what we actually want to do is request.body.newFriend, and that will give us the value of whatever was inside the form. And remember, new friend is because of the name property, the name attribute that we set on the input. Whatever we put here is what we would need to look it up by inside of the route. We don't just want to console.log it though. What we want to do is actually add it to the friends array, which we defined here. So the first thing we'll do is make a new variable, and we'll just call it new friend, and we'll just store request.body.newFriend. And then we want to add it to this array, but unfortunately, we can't just do friends.push new friend, because there's a scoping issue where var friends is only defined inside of this function. And out here, there's no such thing as friends. It's a very sad world. There's no friends. So we need to copy this out and move it up somewhere where it's visible to all of our routes. And this is something that we won't be doing for long, because this is just an array of friends, and we can add new friends in, but as soon as the server stops, they'll go away and reset to this value. Soon we'll be using a database and we won't have to worry about this scoping issue. But for now, we just need to move it outside the routes so that we can access it in all the routes. So now friends.push new friend should work, and I'll show you that now. Restart the server, go back to our form here, refresh the page, and let's add in Gene. I made a new friend, and we get to this route. But now if we go back to friends, I see Gene has been added. So that means that this is working, where we're extracting request.body.newFriend, and we're also pushing it into the friends array, and then we're sending this response. However, it's pretty rare that we want to have some sort of response like this after we add a new friend. Most of the time we don't want to see this. Usually we just want to go back to this page and see the new friend. And to do that, what we can do is instead of send or instead of render, we can use another method on res called redirect. And redirect will take the name of a route, and in our case, we'll do /friends, and it will redirect to this route, and it will run the code inside of the /friends route. And all that that does is it renders the friends template and passes in the value of friends. So now if we start the server again, and we go back, refresh the page, let's add in a new friend here, Tina, and hit I made a new friend. And you can see Tina has been added. Remember that we're not just staying on this page the whole time. If you watch this right here, let me do it again. Let's add in Gene. I hit I made a new friend. You can see the page momentarily refreshes. And that's because we're sending a post request somewhere else. That post request is getting to app.post add friend. It's doing some logic in here, and then it's very quickly redirecting us back to the same page, the same route that we're already on. So it's hardly noticeable. You'll just see the page flicker for a second and see this little icon is the giveaway that the page is reloading. But as I mentioned, if I restart the server, the value of the friends array goes back to this. So we lose all of those friends and we don't have any permanence to our data. We'll fix that once we get to databases in just a few lessons. Okay, let's debrief on everything we've covered. There's kind of a lot here. The first thing we talked about was setting up a post route, and all we had to do was app.post, and it works just like app.get, except that it's only triggered by post request to the particular URL. And then we saw how we can send a post request with Postman, which works. And then we saw that we can send a post request using Postman, and then also using a form. And when we send a form, we need to provide action and method. And I introduced this really early on when we talked about HTML forms, and I mentioned that later in the course, you would know more about what action and method mean and what a post request is versus a get request. So this is that time now where you're starting to understand a little bit more, hopefully, about the difference between get and post and what this action means and what routes are. Anyway, so we have a form and it has a single input, and on that input, we've added the name attribute. And this name attribute, which we've set the value to be new friend, is how the data is added to the request body. So when we submit this, whatever the value of this form is, let's say Tina, it's going to be sent under the name of new friend. And then inside of our app.js, we can extract it with request.body.newFriend only if we've included body parser, which we had to install, npm install body parser, and then we had to tell our app to use it. So app.use body parser, and this whole line is one we'll see all the time. And when we do that, body parser will take the request body and parse it into a JavaScript object that we can use and access like we did here. And the last new thing that we saw was res.redirect, which will take a URL like /friends, and it will trigger that route again and run all the code inside of the /friends route. All right, I'll see you in the next lesson.